Learning Crash Course. Today we continue our discussion about Python. Last session we learned some basics of Python, like the primitive variables, what is Python, the installation of Python, and today we continue our discussion. One of the ways for storing data are lists. Let's say you have some elements and you want to have a container to store all of those elements. In this case, you will use lists. And for creating lists, you have two options. Whether you could initialize a list with in this way, or you could just write list. Both of them are the same. Okay, but this is much more simple. So okay, now we have a list, or we can initialize our list with some elements in that. And the good thing about the list is that we can have different types of variables in our lists. As you could see here, I have a string in here, then I could have a number, this is integer, this is float, and even this the element could be a list itself. So if in here I print A, I will see in here the elements of my list. Okay. The first question is that, okay, how should I index the list? How could I access the elements of list? Okay, it is so simple. It starts from 0, so this is, if I want the first element, it is a 0. If I print that, I will see the first element, and so on. So this is the second element, and okay, as you could see, it is completely straightforward to access to the elements. Sometimes I want to access to a part of list. Let's say I want the first two elements. In here I could say to Python, get me the elements from 0 to 2. In this way, you could see that I have a 0 and a 1. Just note that from 0 to 2 means that 0 and 1, but not 2 itself. Okay. Okay. Sometimes I just want the last element. For this, you could actually use -1. -1 means that 0 means that you are indexing your list from here, but -1 means that you are indexing your list from the end of your list. So a-1 means that the last element of your list. As you could see here, this is the last element of the list. -2 means that this element, so it is reverse ordering of your indexing of your list. Sometimes you want to have, let's say, just get some samples from your lists 2 by 2. Let's say you have some other elements in the lists and you want to have 0, a0, a2, a4, and so on. In this case, you could use if you want to just have 2 by 2 elements, you could just use this. This means that when we don't use anything in here, means that from 0 to end 2 by 2. Okay, if I print that, I will see that it is the first one, this one, this one, and this one. Okay, as you could see in here. That's me. Okay, so okay, but if I put some index in here, means that from 0 to 4, 2 by 2. So it is just 0 and the second one, okay, the third one. Okay, so indexing is very easy and useful in list, and very straightforward. Okay, now let's say you want to have your list in reverse order. You could use -1. This means that as you could see here, now you have your list in reverse order. Okay, and lists also have some useful methods that you could use oftenly, and the point is that maybe a list is the most common way for storing data in Python. So it is very important that you learn more about lists and be fluent and be comfortable to work with lists. The first method, which is very useful for lists, is len. Sometimes you want to know how many elements does our list have. In this case, we could use len. As you could see here, actually len is not a method for lists. It is a separate method itself. Okay, as you could see in here, I have 7 elements in my list. So you should note that this is just one element in my list. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I have 7 elements. Okay. The second method for lists which is useful is list, which I talked about, that if you want to initialize list or convert something to list. Let's say maybe you have an you have string and you want to convert that to list. You could just, as you could see here, I just convert my string to a list. Okay, and it is not just for converting string to list. We will see that later. It is useful sometimes for converting other types to lists. Okay, the next one is append. Let's say you have a list, something like that, and another list. If you print, if you append B to A, means that you just let's see what is the output. As you could see in here, when you append a list to another list, the second list is simply add to the first list. Okay, as you could see in here, this is just only one element for the first list. Okay, now let's say we just want to have extend the first lists. In this case, we will use extend. Okay, now just print A to see what happens. As you could see in here, now I just have the elements of B in A. not with the list itself. So the extend can increase the elements of your first list with adding the elements of the second list in that. Okay, and these are quite useful methods when, let's say, you have some images in directory and you want to read those images and store them in a list. In this case, you just initialize your list with an empty list. Then in a loop that we will talk about how you should use iterations and for loops. Then in each loop you can extend or append images to your list. Okay, that is so simple. Okay, and sometimes you want to know the index of an element in a list. Let's say you have this and you want to know the index of this element. As you could see in here, you could get the index of that element. Okay, so it is the index method, and or maybe you want to remove. Just note that when you print something like this, it prints none, because this method returns nothing. This just removes 3 from this list, so and returns nothing. So you could just put it in here, then it will remove 3 from your list, then print A. Now you could see that you have just the first 2 elements in your list, and this one is removed now. And also you will have sort. Actually, for sort, maybe we want to have we could use more advanced options for sorting a list, but we could see simple case in here for sorting the list. As you could see in here, if you want to sort something like this, it throws you an error, and because you have a string and integer, so Python does not know how to sort these lists. But if you have just something like this, then as you could see here, you will have your list in increasing order, so 2, 3, and 10. Okay, okay, and this is sort. Now it is good to know how to use simple loops in Python. Okay, let's say you want to do something for 10 times. Okay, in this case, let's say I want to print I 10 times. What should I do? One way is to just copy and paste that 10 times. Okay, I don't know whether this is 10 or not, but anyway, but you see that it is not a very cool way, because if I want to now have it for 100 times, then I should copy and paste that for 100 times, which is frustrating. Instead of doing that, I could use loops or iterations in Python. Python is actually very powerful language in for using iterations and loops. And it has different options for using iteration. This the first and the simplest one is to just, as I mentioned, that you want to have 10 different times you want to do something. In this case, you could use for, then this is the iteration variable for, let's say it is I or anything that you want, I, j, or anything for I, then you type in, and you could use range for, okay. It means that this loop iterates 10 times, okay, from 0 to 9. And just note to the indent. When you want to have something in loop, you should have indent for your loop in here. As you could see, I put the print in here, not in there. I should just be careful about the indent. Okay. Now, as you could see in here, I have high for 10 times. Let's print the variable itself. If you want to comment, if you want to have comment in Python, and you want to know how to make something to comment, you should just use sharp sign to do that. Okay. Now, if I print I will have something like this. As you could see in here, I have 0, 1, 2, and to 9. So range 10 means that from 0 to 9. You could have different arguments in range from 3 to 10. As you could see here, now you have 3 to 9. Just note that it is 3 to 9. So if you have n and this is m, you will have m to n minus 1, but not n itself. Okay. Or maybe you just want to have from 2 to 10, but 2 by 2. Now you will have just 2, 4, 6, 8. It is so simple. And this means that actually this function gives you a list. Let us print the output of this function to see what it is. Okay. If you convert that to list, you will see that it is 2, 4, 6, 8. And when you type for I in this, means that in the first iteration I is 2, then it will do something, then the I is equal to 4, and it will do something, then 6, and then 8. So you could actually, instead of using range, you could just create your own list. I could say, okay, for I in this list, print I. Now, as you would guess, in the first iteration, it uses the first element of array as I, then print it will print I, then in the next iteration it will equal 2 and I, then do and then print the I, and so on. Now let's just see. As you could see here, I will have now iteration on my lists elements, and this is very cool in Python actually. Sometimes you want to know, okay, what is the number of your iteration? Okay, I have the elements in here. Let's just call them for the meaning element in here, and I want also to know the iteration number. Okay, you could use enumerate to do that. You could just before your list put enumerate. Okay, now I could just print iteration number is okay. As you could see here, now I print the elements and my iteration number in here. So creating loops in Python is pretty straightforward and easy. Okay, let's do an exercise. Let's say we have a list and we want to get average of that list. Okay, let's say we have, and yeah, we have something like this. Now probably you know that instead of writing this, I could just write range 1 to 7, right? And convert that to list. Now if I print A, I will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and just rename it to more meaningful variable. Now I want to get the average of this list. Okay, we know that before writing the code, just figure out for yourself what does it mean. How should we do in order to get average of list. Let's say we have 1, 2, 3 to n. Then we want to have the average of this list. Okay, one simple way is to just, actually the way is to sum all of the elements. So I should sum all of the elements and then divided that, let's say it is t, divided t by the number of my elements, okay, which is n. So and this is the average. Okay, let's do this in here. Okay, for I in, I could use a range, or I could just use the elements of list itself. It is not different. You could just write it another way. This is just one way. For I in range. Okay, range what? I just want to have all of the elements of list. Okay, so one cool way is to use len method for iterating over list elements. So if I print I in here, I will have 4. Okay, let's say this is 4 to 21 to prevent confusion. Okay, as you could see in here now, I have all of the indices of my list. Okay, and this is very cool. So let's say you know the number of elements in your list and you just put 17 in here. This works, okay, as you could see here. But if I change that to 24, then it will not change, okay? But in here, then you should actually change that. It is not very good to use a number in here now. But if I use this, it will automatically adapt the length of my list. Okay. Now I create a temp or something that is equal to 0. Okay. In each iteration, I add the I element of my list to the temp. So in the first iteration, just let's do this in here, I have 4 to 21 or something. Then I have something called temp. At first it is 0. In the first iteration, I add 4 to that. Okay. In the next, now it is 4. In the next iteration, I add the second element. Let's say it is 5. 5 to that, and so on. So at the end, I will have the sum of my list in here. Okay. Now in here, I will have the sum. For taking average, I could use temp divided by length of my list. Okay. Now, as you could see in here, I have 13.5 in here. Okay. Or just be careful if you use Python 2, you should convert that to float. Okay. In Python 3, if you have an integer, the temp in here is integer. You could print the type of temp. As you could see here, it is integer, and the length of your list is also integer. In Python 2, if you have integer divided by another integer, let's show you in here. So let's say I write something like this. As you could see here, the result is integer. Okay, and for preventing this and get the exact result, you could actually convert the denominator to float by doing this or just this. Okay, now you will have the full result, or convert that in this way. Okay, just okay. So if you use Python 2, you should use float before this. Okay, but in Python 3, it automatically converts them to float. Okay. So in this way, we actually now printed the average of the list. But instead of that, this is actually one way for doing that. This is good for practice. You should be able to do that, and I recommend this to type this yourself. But another way, if you could just search. Don't be afraid to search for your questions, because sometimes you could actually done your tasks very easily. You could, in this case, you could just use sum over len my list. The sum itself taking the sum of your list element itself. Now, as you could see, it is so cool. Instead of writing some different lines, I did that in just one line. Or I could just search sum of elements in list Python, okay? And you could see that in here, you could just search that, okay? It is now some people answer that in Stack Overflow and so on. So if you have any question, you could also search your question in Stack Overflow, which is very reliable resource for learning actually any programming languages if you have any question. Okay. Now you know what is the list. Okay. The next data structure that we want to introduce is dictionary. Let's say you have some names and some values. In this case, you want to create a dictionary for them. Let's say you have or just have some words, hello, for example. You know that hello means in another language, I don't know, maybe in Persian it means salam, okay? Or bye is Khuda Hafiz, okay? And let's do just more words, and one is yek, okay? And so as you could see in here, I have some kind of just let's call these keys and these values. So I have some keys and I have some values for them, okay? So it is different concept from list. I want to create something like this in Python. It's called dictionary. It means that when I have a key for something, then I have its value, okay? Let's do this in Python. In Python, if you want to create a dictionary, you could just write dict to create dictionary. Now, if you type print the type of dictionary, you could see that it is dictionary, okay? Now, you could write, so this is one way to initialize your dictionary. Another way is to put elements directly in that. So for doing that, I could write, okay, hi is salam and 1 is yek. Okay, now if I print my dictionary, I will have this. Now as I told you, we call this keys. So if I just print if I want to get the value of high index, I could just write the key in here, then it will gives us the value for that key, okay, or 1. Okay, sometimes I want to just have the keys to know what are the total keys that I have. In here I could see that I have high and 1. Okay, I could convert that to list because it is dict keys, and maybe I want to iterate over that. Okay, or just I want the values. Okay, that is so simple. So let's give you another example. Let's say you have some people and everybody has some, and you have some hates for every person. So technically, let's say you have John is 182, then okay, you have something like this, and you want just to print all of the people with their corresponding hate. Okay, you could do this in a loop. Okay, for doing this, I could just write for name in mydict.keys, okay, and list. So as you probably know, when you write mydict.keys, you will get Jack, John, and Mehdi, but you should convert that to list to be able to iterate over that. Then try to use your iteration variable meaningful. I could just use I or anything else, but later when I read my code, I don't know what is J. Okay, but if I could just use name now, after some days, if I look back to my code, I know, okay, this is name, so this is meaningful for me still. Now I could just use print the name is name and print the hate is mydict and the key is name, right? And we could use this kind of thing in here. Okay, if I run this, I could see that I have very pretty printing thing in here. So that is so simple. Okay, okay, sometimes you want to iterate on both of name and values and get them as a list that list has 2 elements itself. Okay, let me clarify that for you. If you print mydict.items, Now you could see that it returns, if you just use list in here to convert that to list, you will have a list that contains, we call this tuples, okay? Tuples of your keys and values, okay? So they are 2 by 2, the corresponding keys and values. Now in here, instead of doing this for name and height in list of mydict.items, print name is name, and instead of mydict.name, I could just use height in here, okay? Same result. Okay, it is much more neat for doing this. Now we will know what is dict and keys and values and items. Okay, the last data type for today that we want to learn about that is set. It is actually less common in Python to use set in comparison with dictionaries or lists, but it is not bad to know about that. Okay, the set actually is like list, but without having repetitive element. Okay, so if I define set 1 2 1 1 1, then I print a, then I will have just 1 and 2 because all of these are repetitive. Okay, but if I had list for that, you could see I have all of our elements without removing any repetitive element. But in here I could just have the unique element of my list. If I have a list in here and convert that to set, then I have just unique values of my list. Okay, and you could have you could do some useful operations on two sets. If you have two sets, you could have the union of them with this operator. If you want just the common elements in both of them, you could use the AND or this sign, and if you want to just have the elements in A and in B but not in A and B, you could just this element, which is XOR in other word. Okay, now sometimes it is useful for converting lists to sets and then converting back them. Okay, let's say, and this is actually an exercise for you, we will answer it tomorrow, but it is actually pretty straightforward and simple just for knowing how to use set. Write a program to extract common and different elements of two lists. So if you have two lists, something like that, then we want to know what are the common elements in both lists. So in this list we have 1 and 4 as common elements, and if we want to have the difference list, we will have this list. Okay, and so try to write that. Probably you should know that you could simply write that with sets. Okay, so practically you could actually convert your list into set and do some operations in here which we talked about them, and yeah, that's it, and convert back them to list. Okay, for this session we learned about the the for loops, very simple, because Python have another kind of loops that we talked about them. So, and lists and set and dictionaries. Yeah, that's it. Now you know a lot about Python, but there are still some other things that we should learn to know how should we code. So but for storing data structures and this kind of things, now we know a lot about Python. This is pretty much everything for storing data in Python. Okay, hope that you enjoy from this session and hope to see you in the next session. Bye.